Okay, so we have got Andreas Welsch now. Andreas has spent over 21 years in the software industry. He's led numerous businesses and formed a center of excellence, and he directs AI product marketing at a global business app leader. Andreas's influence spans across innovation projects, 80 plus of them, and he unites businesses and tech teams across 500 Fortune 500 companies out there. Andreas runs his popular podcast that goes by the name "What's the Buzz," and I really recommend all of you to check that out. That's about Andreas for all of us. Over to you, Andreas.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction. Super excited to be here, and thank you for joining. I'm really excited about sharing some real good insights with you from my podcast, What's the Buzz? Because over the last 18 months, I've talked to more than 30 AI visionaries in this space to hear from them how they are approaching AI projects. And the reason why that is so exciting, not only for me, but for the growing community that is following What's the Buzz and the biweekly live streams, is that it's also highly relevant. Because when I talk to people in the field that are more from a technical background, that are either software developers, that are data scientists, that are excited about working on AI, one thing that I see is super critical is how do we work with the business? How do we make sure that what we're so passionate about building actually makes it in the hands of a business user, of a customer, that somebody actually uses this and gets value from this. And while we're so focused and so excited about the technology side, well, really the connection to business is often rather weak, or it's rather a point that we all can improve upon. So I'm on a mission to help create more transparency and information about how can you do this, how can you work more effectively with your stakeholders, with your business counterparts, so that in the end, the things we're building actually make it into the hands of the user. So I've structured the talk for the next 20 minutes along the following lines. We're just going through the introduction, but when I talk to folks in the field, I see that there are a number of forces that are actually influencing your AI agenda. And some of them might not be immediately apparent or known to you. So I want to share some light there on what those are. It might not be what you're expecting, for example. And then out of those more than 30 interviews that I've conducted over the podcast and through the podcast, there are 5 dimensions that I see that I've distilled that are critical to running AI and especially generative AI projects now. So I want to make sure that you take those away and can also memorize them. So I kept it simple to 5. And lastly, what are some of the key insights that the leaders and hands-on practitioners have shared with me on the podcast that you can now benefit from as well in your own projects, in lives, in business. And lastly, we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So really excited to see what questions are on your mind. Please put them in the chat. We'll go through them in a little bit. And towards the end of this session, we have roughly 10 minutes set aside for Q&A. Like I said, really excited to see what's on your mind and how I can help you there as well. So, introduction. We already get parts of that out of the way, but I really want to encourage you, if you want to learn more about this topic of how can you run AI in business successfully and with confidence, listen to the podcast, What's the Buzz? I also run it as a live stream every other week, where I invite hands-on experts and leaders in AI that share how they have turned the hype of AI into tangible business outcomes. By now, there have been more than 30,000 attendees that have joined these live streams and that have listened to the podcast. The best way for you to catch up with it is on intelligencebriefing.com/podcast to listen to it, /live stream to join the live sessions. I also run a newsletter that goes out every Tuesday. So if you want to stay on top of what matters, if you want to run AI in business, please feel free to sign up. And I'm also obviously on LinkedIn, so give me a follow. I usually post every day about how you can run AI in business and what are things that are top of mind that you should be aware of. Now, with that out of the way, let's start talking about what are the influencing forces that your company is exposed to. Look, I see a lot of times when we're in technical roles, but we're so focused on what's the problem in front of us that we might not be exposed to what are the larger things, the larger forces at play that are actually influencing our company's AI agenda, that might be influencing our stakeholders, our management, our executives, our board, and actually quite a few before we even get down to what is the project that we should be working on. So if you're in an AI center of excellence or in some other capacity working on AI projects, you're likely seeing the effects of it. So first of all, right, they're your customers externally to your company. And they have a couple of really, really simple questions, but they're powerful. They're, how can you help me solve a problem that I have? It might be a business problem where you use your software. If you're in the consumer space, right, then might be how can I solve problems there? How can I maybe create content? How can I get better information? Whatever that might be. But how do you help me solve that problem that I have? And secondly, what do I actually get for the money that I pay you for it? Whether it's a subscription or a license or some other form of payment for a different product. That definitely influences your AI agenda. What are we building and who are we building it for? What's the value that we're creating? Now, secondly, right there's another external force, if you will, investors, because they're asking different questions. They're not so much interested in the how do you solve my business problem? They're actually interested in how can I get a return on my investment if I invest in that company? And is your company even worth investing in? Are you building something that does have a future, that will stand the test of time, where there are customers that are attracted to the product, that will buy it, and that will renew, for example? So more financial motivation. And that drives your leaders and your board to consider why AI is a big topic and an important one. And then lastly, there's your competition, and they're never asleep. So for them, it's similar questions than for you, and actually even similar external forces that are influencing them. But much like your own company, your competitors are also thinking about, well, how can we actually increase the revenue and the market share? And how can we build a better product than our competitors? So together, those are the influencing forces and factors. Now, through the live streaming and podcast and talking to more than 30 experts in the space, I see there are 5 common dimensions when it comes to generative AI projects. It all starts with strategy. It connects to leadership, to the culture you're creating, the collaboration you're fostering within your company. And it's all centered and has to be centered around very strong ethics when it comes to AI, what use cases you approach, how you approach them, what kind of data you're allowed to work with and should even be working with to begin with. So the next sections will take one of these topics each and go through that in more detail. So, like I said, more than 30 interviews over the course of the last 18 months. Starting with strategy, the most important one, because that's what you want to get right, and that's what you want to align your AI strategy with in your company, so that it all makes sense when you get to AI projects. Now, phrases that you might hear in your company or as you're working with different stakeholders, hey, everyone says generative AI is so hot, so we should be doing it too. Right? There's something to it, but maybe you shouldn't run blindly towards Gen AI just because everybody's doing it. Or how can we make a certain feature or function or product better with generative AI? Might be another angle. Yes, there is a new technology available with generative AI, but just throwing it at a problem is probably a bad idea if you don't understand what can you do with the technology, how does it help us solve a larger goal. Or things like, let's just build it anyways, even if nobody wants it or uses it, or they don't know yet that they need it. And so what you see to the right, there are really these 4 types of strategies that all have an interplay with each other. It starts with your business strategy. What is the main goal that we're trying to achieve? How does it translate into the technologies that we are using and want to use to achieve that goal in that business strategy? How does it trickle down to the data that we need in different systems and different parts of the business? And lastly, from there, how does it influence our AI strategy? Again, all of those 4 are connected and will influence how you run your AI projects. Now, the 3 things that I want to share with you just from strategy and distilling that from the many interviews in that category are, if your company goes all in, right, on AI, on generative AI, your C levels are obviously bought into it as well, and there are huge opportunities. Right? If you listen to some of the episodes, for example, the one with Tom Davenport, he shared some nuggets where he's seen that in healthcare, in banking, in other industries. So huge potential, and you now have the attention of your C-suite because they're exposed to that information as well, like I said, because of all the external influencing factors. Now, the second thing that's important is define your AI strategy to match your business strategy. Don't do it in isolation. It has to be connected to the all-up goal that you're trying to achieve. And lastly, as simple as it sounds, I see a lot of businesses not getting that right on the first try, is not every business problem is actually one that has to be solved with AI. You can solve it with different methods. It could be with rules, it could be with traditional programming, it could be a change in the process. So not every problem that you see has to be solved with AI. Keep that in the back of your mind as well. So moving on to leadership. And I see, in some cases you are leading with authority. If you're maybe a formal head of an AI COE or have a title in that sense that you lead an AI department and team. But a lot of times you also influence without authority. And so what you might see are sentences like, generative AI does everything we see in the news, create text, images, video, audio, awesome, right? It can do all these things. Or the assumption that it just works out of the box. Well, this is certainly true for some aspects of generative AI, like large language models that you can zoom through an API. It's more nuanced though, because not everything does work out of the box. And there's still integration you need to do, or if you want to get more tailored outcome and output, you need your own data as well. Or, things like AI can solve any problems. While it might sound so simple and so easy if you read the news and if you follow the hype, once you start peeling back the onion, again, it's more nuanced. So the important thing is to manage these expectations on one hand towards your management and towards your senior executives and show what is actually possible, but also ground them in reality of, it's not a silver bullet for any problem that we have. And do the same with your business stakeholders to the side as well. What's important though is building relationships across the organizations and departments. So you're not just stuck in a silo trying to optimize something maybe without having the broader view of how does it help somebody that will use the result of this model and the result of those predictions. So also set expectations, like I mentioned, on one hand, up the chain to your senior executives of what is realistic and what is actually doable with AI, but also how long it takes. Yes, there are things you can take off the shelf and they can dramatically accelerate the development of your Gen AI applications, but it's probably not going to happen overnight. So there's a learning process as well. And lastly, again, because generative AI has captured the attention of the C-suite, you do have a real good shot this time to getting their attention, to getting their buy-in, to run to open doors, if you will, because they're looking for ways, how can we optimize parts of our business with the help of AI? But again, managing expectations is the really critical part. And from leadership, right, then trickles down to culture. What is the kind of culture that we want and we need to create in our business or in our business unit such that people are interested in AI, are more knowledgeable about AI, can think about situations and problems where AI might help them, so that on one hand, they're more open to it and they trust the work that we're doing and the work that AI is doing on their behalf a lot more. And also become multipliers in their organizations, because especially working in large organizations, it can be a challenge, right? Finding the right people and talking to different stakeholders in these departments. But if you're able to identify a few multipliers in each department that can become your spokespeople, that's usually a really good win. So whether it's finance or HR or IT or some other departments. The reason why that is also important is if you don't do that, right, you'll hear things like, they don't know what we're talking about, right? Finance has no clue about AI. We'll just do our own thing and we're the ones that know it best. while that's true for subject matter expertise of data science and how do we build models or how do we build applications, there's a huge component and usually a huge blind spot when it comes to domain knowledge in finance. So that's where this collaboration is essential. So the best way to go about that, based on what my interview partners have shared, is really identify a group of multipliers across the business. It could be 1 or 2 people per department with the sponsorship of their management or top leaders, and get them together, right? Help them learn and understand what is AI, how can it help in their role. You know, it's not here to take your job, but it's here to help you make your job easier in different ways. And we can collaborate with you. If we're in the AI CV, you're in the business role, and we can, figure out what are the best things to go after, what are the best use cases to pursue, do we have the data, all these kind of things, and create that awareness and AI literacy across the business. So it's actually a pretty huge role and not to be underestimated. Because if you are able to do great work together, you can also create a bit of a FOMO or fear of missing out effect. Oh, they're doing this with finance. I'm in HR here. I want to do something with that team as well. I hear Bob said, they're really successful. People are catching on to this. They see benefits of it and from it. I'm in HR. How can we do the same thing with you? That's the best situation that you can create. So people come to you and your team and want to work with you on AI projects. Now, very closely related to culture is actually collaboration. Because again, you cannot go at it alone. You can try, but from what I've seen personally and what my guests have shared as well, there's a pretty high failure rate if you just stay in your own AI swim lane. So, things like, hey, I'm a data scientist. I don't need to know how finance works. It's not going to work. Or look how we've solved this problem, right? Here's the accuracy and F1 and precision and recall and all of those details. If you talk to business stakeholders, right, that's all Greek to them. They have no idea usually what that means or why that's important. But if you're able to put that into a business context of we're able to help you automate your accounts receivable process, and you can receive money, 7 days, 10 days, 20 days faster than you've been able to, or we can help you retain talent or whatever that may be. Put it in the context of that business person and business function. So you get a lot more support because it's a lot more tangible and in their own words. The best way to do that is to really start small and be nimble and grow over time. Start with one department, one use case. If you figure that out, if you do that really, really well, that catches on. You can do the next one and the next one and the next one. So be deliberate in what you choose, because some projects will actually take a good amount of time. Then expand your skills and learn about the business function. That's the best way to learn, right? Bring data scientists and business function together so each side can learn about the other, what they're doing, how to go about it, and start building an appreciation for it, right? There's a lot of depth in business functions like finance to understand how does the business work, how does the process work, these type of things. And similarly also on the data science side. So the more shared understanding we can create, the better the solutions will be that we identify and that we build. And then lastly, use things like storytelling for your business audience rather than technical details, precision, recall, and these kind of things. But put it in the context of a business process and what to expect. And then lastly, the one that's really, really central to all of the others and approaching AI is ethics. To me, that is really at the center of how we all need to think about AI and AI projects, to do that in a responsible way, and to do that from the very beginning. It's not an afterthought. If you think, we built something and at some point we think about ethics, don't. It has to be at the very start as you're thinking about use cases for AI, for generative AI. Is that something that we should even be building? Are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to do that with the data that we might have access to? So yes, there's some bias in the data. It's a matter of figuring out, again, what can you do with it and what are you allowed to do with it? So incorporate ethics into your AI process from the very beginning. Make sure you understand whether the regulations, how you can ensure fairness, how you can mitigate bias. Maybe there's somebody in your legal team that can look into more of these aspects. So I would recommend identifying additional stakeholders that typically deal with these types of topics, or if it's more HR related, make sure somebody from HR is involved that understands what you're actually allowed to do and do that in a way that it's fair. And just be mindful that your decisions can actually have a significant impact on the real life of people. Right? It all looks so arbitrary, and in our labs as we're working with data and notebooks and these kind of things. But as your model moves into production, there can be a real impact to a person and maybe to multiple people. And the impact might be good, which is awesome. But if you don't do it right, it might also have a negative impact. So just be aware of the implications and the order of magnitude. So like I said, 5 dimensions: strategy, leadership, culture, collaboration, and ethics that have come out in all of these interviews that are critical to running your generative AI projects. Like I said, it's a bi-weekly live stream and podcast. Find the information here on intelligence-briefing.com. I would love for you to join and learn with us and share your questions there as well. I'm really eager to see how we can learn as a community, how we can shape more awareness for the topics that we just went through, because they're all critical in addition to the core data science that we're doing, that we're so passionate about. So with that, I'm at the end of my talk and looking forward to seeing your questions in the chat. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time, and thank you so much for this wonderful session, Andreas.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to those in the audience for